Check. Oh, there we are. We're fixed. Check. I'm it. Oh, there we are. We're fixed. Check. I'm it. All right, I'm gonna just take us live back to us, and we can start over. And everyone can hear this right now, so don't worry about it. All right, we're back.
Do the whole intro. Let's just.
We can do the whole intro. That would be nice. That would be nice. All right.
Yeah, do the intro for posterity.
It's still not working for me to listen. There's something wrong with my OBS. All right, whatever. We're going to you. Do the intro.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. And connecting with me now, live via Zoom, is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm flustered. Nothing was working, but I think we're working now, and that's really what matters. We're gonna have to dig into the back end. I just did some stuff with my computer, probably a little too close, and you know what they say about Icarus, Justin. He flew too close to the sun.
You definitely flew too close to the sun, and you're talking now only to our YouTube audience. It's infuriating because for the people listening on podcasts, this is just a normal start to the podcast, and they didn't listen to any of your audio issues to start this off. But you know what? We'll power through it. We're professionals. We know how to adjust on the fly.
Just like the Cavs.
Exactly. You know, sometimes you don't have all of your parts working or available to you, but you know what? You make the most of it. And I think the Cleveland Cavaliers did a damn good job of that over the last two games. They got a much needed win over the Los Angeles Clippers, who made it a much closer game than I would have expected it to be. The guys that were available played their asses off. They competed, made a bunch of tough shots, and really kind of challenged the Cavs with their effort and intensity. And then they stuck around and had a legitimate shot to pull off an upset against an infuriating Philadelphia 70 grifters. So overall, you kind of got the split that you would have expected going into those two games. But I thought the signs of life that we saw from the Cavs over that stretch was really encouraging.
Yeah, it's funny. I named this episode, trending up or trending down, because to the uninformed, or I guess not even the uninformed, like just depending on your perspective, you could very easily make a case that our pets' heads are continuing to fall off. The Cavs lost a winnable game against Philly that they had kind of taken back control of. Toronto swept their West Coast trip to pull even in the standings. My daughter just flung open the office door. It has been a rough start for me. But again, like you could argue things are not going well. But I left that Clippers game, which, by the way, like you could argue maybe they shouldn't have gone to OT against the Clippers. And they were down, 15 points early against Philly, and I still feel pretty good. Do you feel good?
I feel great. I feel really good, and components of that, if you're looking to contrast this from the last time we recorded, is one, we got Caris LeVert back. That is significant. I don't think you win that game against the Clippers if LeVert wasn't playing in that game. I thought he gave some much needed juice, and you immediately kind of gave that reminder of why the Cavs brought him in, why we had so much excitement and were advocating for him for a very long time. And then, holding your own against Philadelphia, that's legitimately impressive, especially without Jarrett Allen. I think we've talked about this before. When guys are outside the lineup, I think you gain an increased appreciation of what they do. I don't think that was necessary. I think we appreciated Jarrett Allen plenty, but that's not a matchup that you expect the Cavs to really even be competitive in. And I thought they did a lot of interesting things going to zone. Lauri Markkanen did a pretty good job on Embiid, and no one's going to stop him. You may not even slow him down sometimes, because you can play perfect defense and he'll hit a step back three on you, because as much as his calls can be annoying, I actually respect what Embiid brings to the table. He's a hell of a player. He's very deserving of either being the MVP or the runner-up to Jokic, depending on how those votes shake out. But I thought it was legitimately encouraging performances for a team that's still trying to remember how to play with one another, having guys in and out of the lineup that are dealing with some personnel issues, not having having the best shooting games from Darius Garland and finding a way to remain competitive. I thought they were two very encouraging games.
Yeah, I thought so too. Like, who do you want to start with in terms of kind of who has you feeling good? Because for me, it's Isaac. And he's not even on our rundown right now. I feel like he has played two of the best offensive games he's played all season. He's stepping into his jumper really confidently. He's getting to the line. He's one of the only players on this Cavs team that attacks in transition. And he felt like, he might be a little bit of that Jared Allen thing where, his good offensive play tends to be like the symptom of a larger health for the team offensively.
Yeah.
But like he looks like he's able to attack and contribute on the offensive end. The team just feels so different to me, man.
Yeah, I tweeted this out during the game, and kind of, I've been honest. Like I'm someone that really values Isaac Okoro, but I haven't necessarily seen kind of the higher upside that some people have described with him, whether it be Larry Nance Jr. or other players, even Jimmy Butler, or some of our fellow colleagues. Like I know Chris Manning is very high on Okoro's upside. It's games like the last few that we've seen, and I'd say we've actually seen maybe 3 games from him like this over the last week or so that show the flashes that are really, really exciting. And I've talked about this before, where I really feel what unlocks his game more than anything is improving the handle, because I think he has such a good sense of where to get on the floor. He makes the right passes. He's just such a high IQ player that I think his slashing ability and the ability to beat guys off the dribble really opens up his game more than just knocking down jumpers would. And there's been signs that are encouraging from a jump shot perspective. His free throw shooting is about 80% now. That is a real big improvement. I actually feel
one of the only guys
when he steps up to the
one
line.
of the only guys on the team.
Yeah,
that makes you feel that way.
Great point. Yeah, it's basically him and Garland right now that I have confidence in when they step up to the line. But just the fact that he's hitting his free throws, he's shooting 33% now from 3 for the season after starting poorly. Like, there are encouraging signs there, but I really think his assertiveness, his ability to put the ball on the floor is what's really going to unlock his game. And that would be the development that starts to open my eyes more to the upside, and going from someone that appreciates what Okoro brings to the table to being a genuine enthusiast.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you just want to see it on a night-to-night basis. I mean, he does have the pieces where you go, damn, this guy could play. I mean, he had 5 assists against the Clippers, and some truly really nice dishes. So you see the flashes here and there. But again, I do think ultimately, like, you just feel the offense feeling a little bit more dynamic lately. Like, yeah, you lose a lot defensively with Jarrett, but I feel like they found their verve again offensively. Caris has been awesome in very limited minutes without putting up jarring box score numbers, which really just goes to show, like, they just needed somebody who had that kind of skill set, that could just kind of like make things a little bit easier. It was so easy to hyper key on Darius that it was really challenging for the Cavs to get much. Like, the threat of Caris off the dribble, I think, is keeping teams more honest and balanced defensively.
And that was my argument, is that I really feel like Caris LeVert is a floor raiser for the Cavs, because he's not shooting particularly well. And one of the criticisms coming in is he's not a terribly efficient player. He's not even at his career averages in terms of efficiency yet with the Cavs. It's going to take him some time to get comfortable, get back fully into game shape, and shake off some of that rust after not really playing for a month. But just the ability to break down the defense and generate those shots is so, so important. He's shown really good activity. I like the way that he competes on defense. Sometimes it's maybe too much activity and it leaves you vulnerable. But
I thought he was good against Philly on defense.
I think so too. And he had some really big defensive plays against the Clippers as well. Like we talked about on the last podcast, we needed guys that could come in and introduce chaos. And when you're asking me where do I want to start off, and the reasons why I'm feeling encouraged is, I think the biggest developments that we saw, and you were right to highlight Okoro, but the biggest developments is, one, getting Caris LeVert back and him looking good, looking physically, explosive. He's moving around there well. And the other part was the Chris Haynes report that Jared Allen has elected to not go and have surgery, and that there is optimism about him returning in the team's final 12 games. I don't know if that was a typo from Haynes or if he was signaling that at some point in the last 12 games of the season, Jared Allen may return. He did add in the report that due to the presence of swelling, as of March 15th, that was the date of the report, a timeline has not been set for his return, and that's probably part of why we haven't had confirmation from the team. But at the very least, this is an encouraging sign. It's more news than we've had for a little bit. So that combination of getting some guys back, Lauri Markkanen returning to the lineup, as well as LeVert, and both of them looking as good as they did, makes me feel comfortable that the Cavs are once again in a position where they have enough firepower to go out there and compete in these games. And it's going to come down to execution more so than the situation they were in before, where we just don't have the horses to compete in these games.
Yeah, I think they very well could have beaten Philly. I thought Philly really executed well down the stretch. A couple hard doubles from Garland off of Maxey, who is just a killer. That dude is so unafraid. And then some MVP stuff out of Joel Embiid. By the way, I'm going to get a little on a tangent with Embiid. He is so good at it's a very Hakeem-esque thing. And I remember, like, before he was compared to Shaq, before he was compared to all these guys, he was compared to Hakeem. And in the way that down the stretch, it was one of the very last possessions of the game where he sneaks baseline on a catch, and as he's landing with the ball on the post catch, he is already in motion baseline for an easy post-up bucket that he got deep position on. I'm like, that is post-play. That is brilliant footwork. Yeah. That is like, people so much think it is this idea where you got to slam your shoulder, then do an up and under. And sometimes the best post players are the ones who, before you've even reacted, have navigated their way to superior position. He was a super duper star down the stretch. And obviously we didn't have our best chance at guarding him on the floor either, but I thought they very much could have won that game, and they just look like a team
in a lot of ways. Like what I was going to say is, in a lot of ways, footwork in the post is the equivalent of a crossover for a guard. Like the ability to kind of free yourself, get their defender off their feet, and generate an open look for yourself. Like Embiid is as good as they come for that. And like I said, he's one of those guys that I really respect out of a Philly team that I don't enjoy and don't respect a whole lot. Carter, I do want you to repeat your point about Tyrese Maxey and Colin Sexton, because I think it definitely merits you repeating it.
Yeah, it continues to bear repeating. I mean, again, I said it on a recent pod after our prior game with Philly, which was, listen, if you see that guy surrounded by the ball handling creation talent and the big man talent around him, and don't see the path for Colin Sexton being a really, really helpful player, I just don't know what to tell you. Like, they have such similar profiles in terms of their freakish first steps, not having a reputation as shooters, but being very capable knockdown, catch and shoot 3-point shooters. It just all is kind of there if you're paying attention. And, like, sure, they're not exactly the same player. And, I'm sure Maxey's value is higher than Colin's. And maybe even was before the Harden
especially
trade.
Not coming off a major injury.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that they're equivalent players, but I just think the use case for that archetype is right there, man. Like Colin Sexton that nobody even is paying attention to, which is pretty much the case with Maxey. Every time Harden and Embiid are running a pick and roll, it's all hands on deck. Man, you can just see the use case.
Yeah. Well, I will add that as much as it's hard to always pay attention to Maxey when there's that much talent out there. Garland needed to do a better job of sticking with him because he left him open for a few threes, a few too many times. And that's the kind of stuff that makes a big difference in the game. I mean, the final minute was very frustrating where Garland got fouled before the ball was inbounded, and then the jump ball situation and all those annoying moments. But that doesn't have as much weight if you don't miss guys. Like, every single possession has value. And that's one of the things that the Cavs are going to have to continue to learn on the stretch is you need to prioritize every single possession because there are going to be winnable games looking at these last 13. But you could very well just as easily go out and lose one of those games. Like, as much as I feel the Cavs have regained your mojo, you can lose it once again just as easily. You can come out asleep against Detroit and catch you, or Orlando, or any team really. Like, even Philly almost got caught by Orlando the other night. Like, any of these teams can go out and spoil for you. So you need to really value every possession like it is the playoffs, because that's basically the situation that the Cavs are in right now.
Yeah. It is going to be very, very tight. I mean, again, things are not good on the standings front right now. I mean, they've moved into a fake tie with the Raptors for the 6th seed because they own the tiebreaker. But now it's kind of not cutting time. It's time for them to actually go earn their 6th seed. They didn't get any favors, but if you're JB, you got to say, yeah. That's the way it's going to be. We're not going to get any favors. It's not going to come to us easy. Nothing has come to us easy this season. We've had to fight uphill both ways pretty much the entire year. And why would the end be any different, Justin? So I don't know. I feel in the macro, it's just hard to feel too down because they were playing good basketball against both the Clippers, who hit some really tough shots. And in a stacked, healthy Philly team, like that team
Clippers just have so many wings and shot makers. Yeah. Like, oh my god, and they're such a well-coached team. Like, it's funny as we go through the Garland appreciation and kind of just marvel at the fact that you went from Kyrie to Garland, where, oh my god, we got like another one of these kind of point guards that you can build around. I love JB, and I've got love in my heart for Ty, and I love to see that Ty kind of got that warm reception there. I'm both teams. I think there's so many parallels between the job that Ty has done in LA, overcoming all of those injuries.
They should probably be coach of the years. Yeah. Either one.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think both of those guys deserve a lot of credit in that conversation. So it was nice to see Ty get that appreciation. I wish that he would have taken it a little easier on us, but it was nice to see the Cavs come out there and find a way to pull that one off, because as much as they were missing guys, when you're in a slump, sometimes you just need a win. Like, you just need to find a way to gut out a victory. And the Clippers made them earn that. And I think that was a really positive experience. And
that's why I felt good about it. I felt like it was an earned win. It was like, okay, they had to play well to win that game, and they played well. So I'm feeling...
Speaking of unearned, on the other side of the spectrum, how are you feeling about Philly after our third matchup with them?
I hate them, Justin. I don't care if it's one-way hate. I don't care if it's sour grapes. They're just tough to... I just hate watching James Harden play. And really, he's the only person on the team I objectively don't like.
Yeah.
Maxey's pretty fun to root for.
I get frustrated with the way that they're officiated.
Sure.
Like, I hate that aspect of them. And I've gotten unreasonably mad and emotional in these last couple of games. And
this team really gets your goat.
Yeah, they really have, and I've been reflecting on it, and I don't know if like some of it is like seasonal depression that is just because everything in life is actually going pretty good, like the Cavs are good, life's good, that I don't have anything to wallow on, so it's manifesting in anger. I don't know what the case is, but I see myself in the moment, and I'm like, why am I getting so angry here? But they really get to me, and
they're
I've
tough.
got a take, Carter.
Go for the take, Justin. You want them.
I want them in the playoffs. We've had 2 close games against them, and I'm at the point where I understand that we're probably playing one of the top 3 seeds, and we're likely not going to win one of those playoff matchups. We might be able to push them, but if you're talking about Miami, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, odds are those teams are going to be favored, and I'd probably pick them in a series.
What about Boston?
But if we were to upset one team, Carter, there would not be a more satisfying team to upset
Sure.
than Philadelphia.
Sure.
And that possibility, if I'm going into a fight where I have nothing to lose and everyone's counting me out, give me the one that pisses me off the most. Give me the villain that I want to go after, and that's what I want in a series. Like, give me Philadelphia. I'm here for it. And you know what? If you start to push them, and you really challenge them, then all of a sudden it's like James Harden gets traded to your team in the middle of the series because he's going to start playing against Philadelphia. Basically, I'm here for it, man. That's the series I want, and I'm still feeling pretty confident, or at least pretty good about the 6-8.
I don't want it for you.
That's fair.
I think you'll get too upset if we lose.
I think in a month from
I think you're going to be too in your feelings. But the problem is, if it's not them, I mean it could be Milwaukee if we land the plan, or Miami if we land the plan. But it also could be Boston, who I also can't handle losing to. So I guess I'm with you. I guess I'm there because I do not want to lose to Boston. I will. That will bring all the glowing media takes on Twitter. I won't be able to handle.
I think my hope is that I am in a healthier mental place in a month where I can properly process everything that's going on. You're right. You know me better than I know myself, but I'm still an optimist that I can get there. But one thing I do want to highlight from that game, because I thought it was really encouraging, the Moses Brown experience. We got our first real taste of it outside of garbage time.
We should have gotten more.
I had some fun, Carter.
We should have gotten more. There were. I'll tell you this much. So JB, and we'll talk about this when we talk about Evan Mobley playing the 5 as of late, which you've so dutifully noted in our rundown. But the minutes that Joel Embiid was on the floor when we were running a Love Lowry front court, maybe don't do those again, JB. Like that was tough sledding, and ultimately, like I would have liked to see him more. I would have liked, like, especially when Mobley needed to sit and Embiid was on the floor. I really liked the minutes Moses gave, and I'll say this: I think he should really earn some for the remainder of his 10-day, and probably he'll get another one while we wait for Jarrett to come back. I don't think it's the worst idea to kind of just continue to give him minutes in the Ed Davis spot. We talked about this on the last pod. But Ed is the kind of guy who you almost kind of want to slot in more when you've got the rest of the lineup in place, when everything's cooking right and you just need to not mess things up. Like, I loved the variance that Moses brought, and he wasn't perfect.
No.
But ultimately, like, he just had a little bit more juice in those legs. I think it was our friend Ben Starcher from Real Cavs Fans. He said something along the lines of, when I said Moses should get rotational minutes, he says he's the only guy that gets off the bench without groaning, so he gets them by default.
Well, the funny thing about Moses Brown is when he's running up and down the court, it looks like he's got roller skates on, and I find it really funny. He's got a little bit of that Bambi on ice, but there's just so much energy there. I want more of it. And the nice thing about Moses Brown, too, is he passes the former team test, where Mavericks fans aren't exactly stoked that he's gone. Boston, when they traded for him, Celtics fans are like, hey, this is a guy that we probably could have kept and could have used. Toronto fans went on Dishes and Dimes, and Toronto fans were annoyed that they didn't get Moses Brown when they've been looking for a center. This is a guy that, like, he's raw. He's going to make mistakes, but he's going to go out there and he's going to make stuff happen. And his activity, it draws attention. And I thought he gave him a real shot in the arm when he came into the game the first time. I like the activity. I'm sure there's going to be things that drive JB nuts when he doesn't understand his assignment, bites on a pump fake, or kind of makes some mistakes. But I think you got to kind of let him play through that, because you need a little bit more of that variance. You need a little bit of juice. And this is a guy I wouldn't mind seeing him stick around. Like, let's say, because I believe the Cavs still have a roster spot available. Like, if you promoted Brandon Goodwin to that roster spot and gave Moses Brown the two-way that Goodwin is currently on, I'm here for it. Like, let's keep him around. Let's give this a shot, because what he has in terms of a skill set, size, athleticism, it's a real fit for what the Cavs have. And our buddy, friend of the podcast, Steve Jones Jr., tweeted out that the Cavs having Moses Brown is just incredibly on brand. And it really does feel like this is a guy that fits into what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I'll take it another step further. Not only do I want him to play more center minutes when Evan's not out there, especially against teams like Philly where Joel Embiid's going to be on the floor, I want him to play more with Evan. I think that JB, and we can...
I wouldn't have hated it, especially against Philly.
Yeah, and, it was funny. One thing that I didn't really see anyone talking about on Twitter during the game was the Cavs changed their strategy defensively in the second half. They stopped putting Mobley on Embiid, and they had Lowry on him. What they clearly had decided was he's going to cook either of these guys right now. He's too strong for either. And Evan, as a help defender and free safety guarding a guy like Thibault, is a much better use of his talent. Like he's just bound to Embiid and kind of wiped out as a result. And to that end, like especially against tough post scorers, I'd like to continue to see that. Like if you have Moses Brown out there to do 60-70% of what Jarrett can do defensively, aka just stand at the rim, be super tall, and let Evan go back to playing free safety where he is absolutely best defensively, it just makes a lot of sense. So I know we're overreacting for sure to 11 or 12 minutes of ambulatory play at the backup five, but I think you got to figure out what you have here, because it's important to note here, Justin, and I know we got to talk about Mobley at the five, but I do want to. I'm feeling a little excited to talk about this team, so I'm all over the place. The Cavs do have one last roster spot open, and if it were you, would it go to Mr. Brown or Mr. Goodwin?
So the reason I think with the two-way contract, there's only a limited number of games you can play, and Goodwin's played more of it. So I'm not a cap expert or anything like that, but I think the way I would do it is promote Goodwin and then put Brown into the two-way contract if he was amenable to that. Obviously, part of this also is determined by what they're willing to do, both from a player and team standpoint. So I'm not too sure there, but I'd kind of like to keep them around, man. Like
I'd like to keep
there's
them
a value to it, and me too. And obviously, I think one part that plays into this is our confirmation bias, because we wanted to see Moses Brown out there. It made sense for him to not necessarily play over the weekend, but as you played Philly, this seemed like a matchup where you could really use him. And I think they have another one coming up here against Denver, where I would like to see him out there as a big body, kind of bothering Jokic. And you're another guy you're not going to stop or maybe even slow down, but having a 7'2" guy on him with long arms being active might just be a little bit disruptive. And I think there's a real value to that. But it does tie in to one of the things I wanted to talk about, which is seeing Mobley play more at the five, because I think there's been positives and negatives with it. I think what we're seeing from Evan Mobley playing more at the center, because for the season he's been playing about 16 minutes a night at center without Jared Allen. But what we're seeing is he's been a little bit more assertive in this role. I think him playing at the five and usually having a little bit more spacing around him kind of makes it easier for him to be assertive. There also just isn't Jared Allen out there, eating some possessions where if a guy's out, all of a sudden you need to have the other guy take more shots. But I do feel like there has been a drop off on the defensive end, and just both with what Mobley is able to do as a defender when he's playing at the four and kind of being able to be that free safety and chaos agent, and also just not having a big body at the five to slow down some of these truer centers, whether it be Bam Adebayo scoring on him, Nikola Vucevic, Ivica Zubac, as I botched that name, and then Joel Embiid. Like, I think we've seen in individual matchups, and this isn't necessarily a surprise given his age and his frame and everything, but we've seen teams be able to have some success going at him.
Yeah, I mean, he's not an elite post defender yet against elite post scorers. I think he is so much better as a help defender. I also think it's a byproduct of what's around him. There are plenty of plays where Evan still, as the primary rim protector, has been able to step up, deter a shot, keep it, or blow up an action. But when he steps up.
That block on Zubac was one of his best plays
ridiculous.
of this season. Like, it was incredible.
Ridiculous. But like sometimes when he has to overcommit to stopping penetration or you know, an open bucket, the floodgates kind of open behind him. Lowry and Love are just not nearly as good at cleaning that stuff up as Jarrett is. So, you know, I think it's a bit of chicken and the egg there. With the defense, it's not just Mobley's playing worse; it's that they're playing worse players at the 4 and 5 around him defensively.
Yep.
But ultimately, I just think it's just continues to prove like the Tower City thing just works. The Mobley Allen pairing, it just works. Like they are complementary enough on offense, especially when the team has their full complement of offensive talent out there, or whatever approximate it has been. And, you know, what you gain on the defensive end is an identity more than anything else. That is the identity of this team, in my opinion, is that when you beat one and one has to step up and your man and that guy's man cuts into the dunker spot for what is normally an easy layup or dunk, there's another freaking 7-footer there to blow it up. And when a team runs a wide drag out pick and roll and Mobley or Allen has to switch, there's still another elite shot blocker waiting at the rim. That is their identity. That's why they won earlier in the year. It's why they had a top 2 defense for a good stretch of the year. And like the reality is, even if you can find workable lineups, I think JB's doing a really nice job at that. I thought the move to put Market on Embiid was actually very inspired. And that's the kind of move you can kind of get laughed at for. You're putting Lowry Markkanen on Joel Embiid. I thought it was a very bold move.
Honestly, how many of those guys has there been this season though, where it's, oh man, the Cavs are starting with Lowry on Michael Porter Jr. or on LeBron or Joel Embiid? Like, it really is, and I think it deserves a shout out. It's amazing what Lowry has actually been able to do stepping up this season. Like, I think people have kind of labeled him as just a Duncan Robinson type in a lot of ways, where it's just a matter of whether or not he's hitting his shots. And I've been really enjoying the Lowry experience this season. Like, there's certainly been the frustrating parts, but I think overall he's been playing really hard. He's starting to attack the basket more. I like when he rises up for the random Tom Chambers dunks that he has. And I've just been very, very pleased with his overall effort and impact on the game beyond just scoring.
Yeah, but I mean, like, ultimately, I totally agree, and I very much have enjoyed Lowry, but I thought it was a bold move from JB, but these are creative decisions you have to make to accommodate weaknesses. Yeah. And even if you make the right calls and you gain maybe something you don't have in the Mobley Allen lineup, you lose the identity and defensively. Yeah. You lose that, yep, we're going to shut your water off for 6 straight minutes. That we had big stretches of earlier in the year. So I think that's why, you know, I think we're both big fans of Mobley at the 4. I don't want him to become a 5, maybe ever, especially if you have someone like Jarrett there at the 5 alongside him. And I just feel really, really excited about that pairing, because you really do feel Jarrett's absence.
And I think this is something that they can weaponize in the future too, right? Like, if the way that they continue to move forward is they start together and you have the option to close with them together, or when the backup 5s are with Mobley at center, and all of a sudden, like, if you're running back the same team and it's Colin, Caris, Jetty, Love, and Mobley for a second unit, like let's say Okoro comes in quickly to relieve one of Sexton or LeVert, and that's your second unit. Like, that is 4 combo players that can all create for themselves and others, as well as Mobley, who can create for himself and others. And I just think that can make you so explosive. But on the defensive end of the floor, like, there's a reason why the Warriors didn't play Draymond at the 5 all the time, right? Like, there's so much more value to him using his IQ to be that free safety, to be disruptive. And I think that's what makes him unique. So I think there's a temptation for some, like, the people that looked at Mobley and say, okay, there's a 7-footer, he has to be a center, we need to be conventional at all times. Like, you're going to see him be more assertive individually and have better individual numbers at the 5. but I don't think that necessarily means that he is a center. Like to me, it just, I think you take away a little bit of what makes him unique. And we saw some of this too when Sexton went down, right? Like everyone automatically attributed, oh, well, now like Garland's, he's taken on a little bit bigger of a load. He took a leap. Sexton was holding him back because they already had that opinion to begin with. That has never come up once when it comes to Ricky Rubio, who Garland took another leap after that, because once again, there's just less people to be able to help out. And the joke was made in our Discord that maybe Garland's Highlander, and it's possible that he just needs to take out every other ball handler so he can thrive, but I don't think that's the case. And the other thing you're seeing with Allen out of the lineup is Garland needs to work a whole lot harder. Like, just to get free, he has to dribble so much more. And I think it's having some impact on his shooting percentages because you don't have that reliable screen setter in Jared Allen. And what we've seen throughout the year is those three work incredibly well together. Mobley and Garland without Allen, 109.4 offensive rating, 105.5 defensive rating, plus 3.9 net. With Allen, they are better on offense and defense. 110.6 offensive rating, 102.6 defensive rating, and plus 8 net. They are twice as good together. And to me, it's just a reminder, like, I love that they're able to find success without a key player being in. I believe they're even 7-7 without Garland. Like, they have found ways to win without basically everybody throughout this year. But it's so encouraging that these guys mesh together so well, and it's such a good fit. It's just such a great spot to start off from a team building standpoint.
Yeah, they're awesome together. It's funny, we're kind of arguing against, a very, very, very small minority. I don't think these conversations have started yet. I'm sure they will in earnest. I feel like they've mostly wiped those away. But yeah, it's really, really exciting. I do want to move us over to the bench, though, because a couple key interesting things have happened as of late. And I want to start at the backup point guard position. Obviously, Goodwin isn't on a full-time contract yet, and I don't remember exactly what that means for playoffs. But there's louder and louder, I'm seeing on Twitter, some folks thinking, should Goodwin just be our backup point guard and Rondo moves to the third string? I'm curious what you think about that, because I think it's a complicated answer.
I don't think there is an easy answer. Like, I think in certain games, like, it might be a feeling out process. Like, JB has gone to guys deeper in the rotation based on matchup throughout this season. And I think it gets into kind of an interesting philosophical debate of, do you want to, like, if there's 15 minutes available for like the 8th and 9 man in the roster, would you rather give 7 and 8 to both guys, or would you want to give 15 minutes to the guy that makes the most sense? And I think there's going to be nights where Rondo makes more sense. I think there's going to be nights where you need the scoring punch of Goodwin. It may be determined by how someone does in their first shift. So I don't think there's necessarily an easy answer there. I really love what Brandon Goodwin is bringing to the table. That block against the Clippers was fantastic.
One of the most athletic blocks I've ever seen, Justin.
Is wild. But I do think that there is a trickle down effect, because when Goodwin's in the lineup and not Rajon Rondo, I think you see a negative effect for Cedi Osman. He came out really flat against the Clippers, and to give credit to Chris Fedor, who reported on this both during the game last night and as well follow up today with his subtext. I hope I'm not betraying any confidence as talking about a paid subscription on the podcast here. But just said that the lack of effort that Cedi came out with kind of frustrated the coaching staff, and that's why Windler got a look, and that might not be a continued thing moving forward. But I do think when you don't have Rondo out there to set up Cedi and get him cleaner looks with that second unit, the activity that someone like Windler can bring, keeping rebounds alive, the hustling on defense, all the little things, I can see why you want that along with the scoring punch of a Brandon Goodwin, versus when Rondo's in the lineup and he's able to set guys up. Yeah, you want Cedi out there for the spot up shooting, a little bit of secondary creation. Like, I don't think there's an easy answer, and I think it might really come down to who the opponent is, what the situation is, what the score in the game is, how everyone else is playing, like the tough decisions that a coach has to make on the fly.
Yeah, I think that ultimately they just bring such different things. You know, you're right. Rondo sets up guys way better than Goodwin. There's just no way around it. But Goodwin, again, on nights where teams are overplaying, playing uber physical off ball, he had a play against Philly where they were setting up a double drag on the left side, and he just bursts to the right and rejects both screens. Like, you almost never see someone reject a double drag. Like, it was just such a weird play that Philly clearly, I think it was Isaiah Joe was guarding him at the time, was like, whoa, what? And he got like a wide open layup out of it. Those little chaotic decisions are really, really valuable. And he's clearly a great athlete. It was funny during that Toronto game against ESPN because Vince Carter was clearly pretty infatuated with the guy as his former teammate and seemed to really think highly of him. And like, I do think he's a ball player. I think he's an NBA player without a question at this point, which is, by the way, a big deal when you're a two-way guy. A lot of two-way guys are not for sure NBA players. Yeah. I mean, there are guys on the Cavs roster. I mean, we've discussed, is Dylan Windler an NBA player? So like, knowing the point that I'm at with him is like, I know he can play in the NBA and help a team. And that's a huge step. And am I ready to say he's the backup point guard? No, I think you're right. I think you have to read the room. You have to read the situation. I do think more and more I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind signing him to a full-time deal so he can be a playoff contributor.
Like you have first, second, and third strings at every position, right? And I'm more than happy with Brandon Goodwin kind of being that third string point guard for us because you want a guy that's a little bit of a change of pace player, right? That can go in there and, maybe some nights it works, some nights it doesn't. We've obviously seen him make mistakes out there, but having that change of pace guy, I think there's a real value to that. And they have that at other positions too, right? Like having the option to go to Lamar Stevens, I think is massive. And Lamar definitely deserves a shout out, especially for that game against Philadelphia, because I thought he's kind of struggled defensively the last few games where he's maybe getting a little foul happy. Some of that might be a product of guarding guards more so than forwards, but I thought he played really well against Philadelphia. He played disciplined defense. He really competed, gave them some buckets when they really needed it. It's guys like Lamar, like Brandon, like Dean Wade that really, really make a difference because we know what the top of the roster can do, but having guys this deep in the rotation that can step up, it's depth that I just didn't realize that the Cavs had.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I really do feel like they have 11 guys I could really think could help us on any given night. We should talk about Windler as well. Jetty is in the doghouse, clearly. Windler's actually gotten to play again. I actually had been texting some friends like, I wonder if we're going to see him ever again in a Cav uniform. It just felt like he had been marooned on Charge Island. And I didn't know if they were going to bring him back. And it goes to show that I'm an idiot and don't know anything about anything because he's played a ton the last two games.
We both said we wanted to see Windler. We said we wanted to see him, and he played.
There you go. I mean, what do you think you've seen? What have you seen from him? Because even though I don't think he's made a bucket, I've actually been pretty encouraged with this play.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it, right? Like he's played 23 minutes over the last two games and took 3 shots. And that's kind of been one of my frustrations with Windler is I really like all the little stuff he does. I like that he competes on defense. His rebounding 100% translates. Like he goes out there and he makes a difference. I thought he made an impact on that game and you felt him out there. But I just wish there was a little bit more confidence from him or assertiveness in taking those jump shots because they really need someone with the shooting skill that he has. And it's just like, I don't want this to sound negative because I thought he was an overall positive. He was a net positive in those 2 games, but it just feels like there's still stuff left on the table with him. And even though I'm not really a believer long-term in like him fitting in with the roster at this point, I still believe like there's something in there. I think that there's talent available and I just want want to see him put it together. Like, it would be nice to see just one really assertive performance where he goes out there, plays maybe 15 minutes and takes 6 shots. Like, I would love to see that from him, but we just haven't got a lot of that. And I'm sure him going over 3 over the last 2 games didn't help the confidence to start pulling away.
No, probably not. I ultimately think, like, he is in a lot of ways the anti-Jetty. Jetty is this variance monster, like the worst Jetty is way worse than a standard Windler game, and the best Jetty is miles better than the best Windler game. Yeah. And I think to some extent that's probably the point the coaching staff is making is, hey, like, the jumper doesn't have to be going for us to be able to play Dylan there, Jetty. I do think there's a stability and a steadiness message there. That, because Jetty has not been the most focused defender in his career. And, obviously has been slumping as of late. It feels like a harsh reaction to me, but obviously I'm not in the locker room. I'm surprised Jetty's been benched these last 2 games, but and we'll see kind of how it continues to look. Because again, Windler earned minutes yesterday. I thought he played good in his 11 minutes. He was plus 10 for a reason. I thought he had some really, really nice defensive possessions in that game. And, it's not like he's just gone out there and been a complete non-factor. So it's just going to be really interesting to see. I would be stunned if Jetty stays in the doghouse, and I still think he's their best chance to win against good teams because he can hit 5 threes in a quarter when things are going right and finish in transition and draw fouls and all that fun stuff that Dylan just doesn't really do right now. But it's been really interesting to see, and I'm kind of glad. It's been, for a weird part of the season, there's still a lot of individual player analysis that we've been able to do as of late.
And I also think it's a good message to send too, right? Like, hey, you went down to the G League on assignment. You kind of did what we were hoping for. You progressively got more assertive while you were there, and now you earned another look in the rotation. Like, I think that's a good precedent to set.
And the other thing that is worth noting is Caris is doing a lot of Jetty stuff now in the second unit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And Jetty running secondary pick and rolls is never our favorite thing, but now it's like really untenable. Like, he really needs to be a spot up shooter who defends well. In those Caris-led lineups, because Caris is going to handle the ball. He's going to run a lot of pick and roll. Goodwin's going to run a lot of pick and roll, and kind of get the team into their offense. So, to that extent, like, it is a bit of a challenge to Jetty, which is like, hey, we need you to fit whatever we need. Like, the talent around you on the second unit is improving. You need to find a way to fit in and help.
That's a really smart point. And the one thing I'll say about Jetty kind of getting benched for Philadelphia and the second half against the Clippers is, even when I don't fully understand things, I'm at the point where the coaching staff has earned a fair bit of trust from me over this season, where they know kind of how to push the right buttons, to how to motivate people, when to get on guys, when to let them play through some mistakes. And even when you look at Caris coming back, or Garland after they rested him with the back, both of those guys came back and immediately you're like, oh, they look good. Like, they look physically good. It's not, oh, should they really be playing? Like, is Garland's back still kind of bothering him, or is Caris moving a little gingerly on his foot? Like, within the first 3 possessions that Caris was out there against the Clippers, he had that turnaround in the paint where he basically got like crazy low, his ankle like flexed to the side for like a little turnaround jumper in the paint, and he looked great physically. So I think, as frustrating as it can be to be without a timeline with Jared Allen, or not really knowing when guys are coming back, not knowing what the situation was, LeVert, they've come back and looked great. And to me, that buys some level of confidence and trust that they know when guys are ready, when they need to rest, what buttons to push. And obviously there's going to be mistakes or changes that we might make if we were managing the rotation. But I do think that they have a pretty good read on this roster, both from a health and rotation management standpoint.
For sure. I'm really excited to see kind of how the rotation bears out for the next week or two while we wait on the impending Jarrett return, because there's a lot of guys who are going to get opportunities right now, especially as the team is fighting for their lives.
Yeah. I mean, they really are. It's that game against Toronto a week from today on Thursday is going to be a doozy, man. Let's if we look at the games leading into that, we'll just take a brief look at this before we wrap this up. But Cleveland's next 4 games: Nuggets, Pistons, Lakers, Raptors. For Toronto, they play the Lakers, Sixers, Bulls, and Cavs. That's pretty significant. Like, all 3 of those games, like, I'd say the Nuggets game is a could-win game for the Cavs, but the Pistons and Lakers, they absolutely should win those games. Those are games that I will go into expecting a win. If we can go 2-1 or sweep the weekend or those 3 games, you're in a really, really good spot, especially with Toronto having a tough stretch with the Sixers Bulls before they play the Cavs.
Listen, it's time for them to start winning games that they maybe should. Their should wins need to become wins, and their could wins need to turn into, at least 50% wins. If they win all their should wins and win 50% of their could wins, we're ducking the play-in. That's the reality.
Well, let's look at it here. The should win games for the Cavs: Pistons, Lakers, Magic, Hawks, Knicks, and Magic again. That's 6 games. Could win games: Nuggets, Raptors, Bulls, Mavs. Those are the March ones, which you assume are without Jarrett Allen. Then they play the Sixers, the Nets in Brooklyn, so probably no Kyrie. Probably going to have Jarrett Allen back second last game of the season, then season finale against the Bucks. So you don't know if they're going to be resting guys. As you said, like, if you get 2 to 3 of those could win games and take care of the games that you should win, that's 9 wins right there. I don't expect them necessarily to get 9 wins, but if you win 8 of the next 13 or your final 13, you're going to be in the driver's seat. It's going to be very hard for Toronto to catch you, especially if one of those could win games is the game against Toronto.
God, if they win that one, that'll feel good.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap. I'm calling now. You win that Thursday game in Toronto, that's a wrap.
Vince Carter, it's over.
It's over, baby. It's over. We already beat them once, essentially, without Jarrett Allen. Now, they didn't have Fred VanVleet, but we didn't have Caris LeVert. So let's call that just about even. Two guards that aren't necessarily efficient scorers. Let's call that a wash.
Get us yelled at.
On that, we're most certainly going to get yelled at. I don't think Raptors fans they don't stick around this deep in the podcast if they do tune into us.
You're fine.
So we'll probably be okay there. But thank you so much to everyone that tuned in. We will be back on Sunday. Excited. We'll be having Kelsey Russo from The Athletic on the podcast on Sunday. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll talk Mobley Mondays and hopefully 2 wins over the Nuggets and Pistons. Cross our fingers there. If you're listening via YouTube, like, subscribe, click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast, support us by leaving a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, just send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.